Hey Randy, I got your perfume vendor rebuilt, and here's the reproduction label I put in it. Polished up the horns. Here is the reservoir for the perfume. It's been rebuilt. There is a rubber gasket there at the needle so that perfume doesn't drip out. Got a red cap here to seal it up. I repaired the brake. It's brazed, and then the spring is soldered on. Took apart the reservoir, cleaned it all out inside, put it back together and sealed it shut. And to have it spray perfume, I crank the wheel. All right, when I pull back on this arm and let it go, you'll see it spit perfume. Rotating this wheel pulls this back, and then spring force lets it go. So I'll try that again here. Just like that. You put it right here and let it spit. Ew. If you do have to pull the reservoir out of the bull's head, notice that the two mounting screws here and here, they're slotted holes, and you want to make sure that this chrome plate is pushed all the way down. If when you tighten the screws, the plate lifts up like this, so that the slot is, or the screw is resting at the bottom of the slot. If this is resting up like this, then what happens is there'll be interference up here on the top side where the penny rests, and when you crank the horns, can't see it in there, it's dark, but there will be interference, you'll know it, if this is not sitting all the way down. With some light on now, you can see what I'm talking about. When you crank the horns, the penny resting right here, this edge just barely clears this wheel. And so that only clears when this chrome plate, mounting plate, is all the way down. Let's put a penny in and see how this works. I'm including two things. One is this little piece of hose, and that would go over the filler cap or the filler tube, so that gets this out where you can fill it a little easier. And this section of, it's actually a large O-ring, but this is just a section out of it. And so about 3/16 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch cut off of this, that length is what goes on the end of the plunger. So if you watch my first video where I did a complete restoration and showed you the inside of this, the plunger to spit the perfume out runs down here, and then at the very end of it there's a hole in it, and then this little piece of rubber will fit in that hole, and then the end of the rubber, the side that's sticking out of that plunger, the end of that rubber goes up against this little nozzle and seals it, so that while you have spring force pushing this up against the nozzle, that little piece of rubber seals so you don't continually drip perfume out. And so let's see it give us a little bit of perfume for 1 penny. If you ever deposit a penny and then go to crank the horns and it feels really tight or stiff, hard to crank, You push down and there it's hard. Just let it come back for a second and try it a second time. It should go pretty easily, but the penny is actually rotating that wheel, and depending how the penny falls down the chute and comes to rest against that wheel, sometimes it can be cocked a little bit where it's just going to bind a tiny bit trying to push that wheel and rotate it. But if you let go and then try it again, usually the penny just shifts a tiny bit in there, and then it will roll really smooth after that. So give that a try. One suggestion I have for you on the maintenance of this vendor, it'll be really fun and novelty for several months, and then it's going to kind of wear off, and then the perfume just sits in there. You may go, like I did, months without dispensing any perfume from it, or you have, friends over in a party, and it might not get used until the next party, and so the perfume will actually evaporate over time. And if you watch my first video where I show you the restoration of my machine, that video is about 6 years old. And in restoring yours, I opened mine back up and looked at it, and the pump was starting to have problems. It was sticking. And sure enough, even though I cleaned the inside of my reservoir and pump very thoroughly when I rebuilt mine, it was starting to get all black and goopy, gunky again, because when that perfume or the essential oils, whatever you put in, when they start to evaporate, they just clog up that pump. And so highly, highly recommend that every time you fill this up with perfume, you first drain it and then take isopropyl alcohol. I found that works good in cutting the oil and the gunk in the perfume. Isopropyl alcohol, fill the reservoir up completely with it, and put your thumb or put the cap on the filler tube, and then shake it, turn it upside down, take the pump and exercise it by hand back and forth. You just want to really, really clean it up good. And you'll notice when you turn it over and dump the isopropyl alcohol back out, it'll be pretty discolored because it's dissolving all that goop that's inside the reservoir. And so I would then fill it again, try it several times until when you drain the reservoir, that alcohol is draining clear. And if you do that, you should be in pretty good shape. But I can almost guarantee you, if you don't ever clean this, in about 6-7 years, you're going to be sending it back to me to completely dismantle again, because it will freeze up on you. That gunk in there is just miserable. So, if you really want to dispense perfume because those people they want to see it happen, they want to smell the perfume, that's great. You're going to have to do that maintenance like I'm saying. A better thing to do, and this is what I'm going to do now that the novelty is worn off on mine, and I just show it on occasion, I'm filling mine with isopropyl alcohol only. And yes, that'll evaporate over time, but one filling of the reservoir will probably last a couple months, and then I'll just fill it up with more alcohol again. But from here on out, alcohol only. No more perfume in this bad boy. For more information, visit GameRoomRepair.com.